All right. Good evening, everyone. It's been a while since the last video, and that's because I've been dealing with some personal stuff, but I'm back now for the most part. And today we're talking about an extremely divisive person whom I've been very critical of personally in the past, named Grummz, also known as Mark Kern. Something I want to mention here before really getting started, this video has gone through a couple of different iterations so far, probably one of the reasons why it took a bit longer than usual. At one point, it was just a straight up call out, because I think there's some pretty valid reasons to do that, just so we're clear. But I also ended up having a roughly 3-hour conversation with Grummz himself about everything from game development to family issues and future prospects, which I have to say went pretty well, and I respect him for taking the time to do that, despite very obviously knowing that I'm about to criticize him and his project, as well as the track record of said project. What I landed on, all things considered, is a reasonable look at the crowdfunded enigma that is EM8ER, or Ember, and hopefully a nuanced examination of how community passion can sadly end up as an 8-year, $600,000 money pit that, as of right now at least, fails to meet expectations, and more importantly, how team sport politics in video games has allowed a pretty substantial number of people to flat out ignore things that they otherwise would have viciously criticized. I'll start with a story here. Most people have probably heard the term Gamergate before at some point or another, but for the most part, it's become an example of boogeyman terminology that gets thrown around whenever someone tries to make a bad argument on social media. Somehow it seems like everything is Gamergate and the chuds are responsible for the unending misery of the modern world, but in reality, Gamergate was just a big argument over ethics in journalism and overall accountability that some people took way too far. It's a complicated topic. It's like 5 or 6 videos by itself, and the FBI had a whole investigation that they declassified about the hate mail that people got. Like, it's a whole big thing. But one of the central figures back then, when all of it happened, was a woman named Zoe Quinn. Regardless of personal opinion here, Zoe Quinn previously ran a Kickstarter campaign to make a game, and putting it bluntly here, she appears to have scammed everyone. The last update for this game on Kickstarter was all the way back in 2018. The last time she talked about it publicly was maybe 2021, but she openly stated in 2019, quote, "ran out of money a long time ago. Not cool with asking people to work for free. Got a day job to start crawling out of debt and in a place where I can properly finish it. This is the day job," end quote. Now, something I want to make very clear is that Zoe Quinn has been extensively criticized for a host of different reasons by a particular side of the political aisle, some reasons being valid, others not so much. But just to be crystal clear on this part, because I don't think anyone should really be disputing it ever, that criticism, particularly criticism of her crowdfunding initiative, irresponsible use of backer funds, and lack of delivery on expectations, is completely valid. In 2018, she openly acknowledged that instead of working on the game that she had promised while accepting $85,000 for it from backers and fans, she had instead been writing a book. And even now, to this very day, there are people who gave quite a lot of money to see something happen who feel let down or disappointed, which is the fault of Zoe Quinn. I know what some people are thinking. What does Zoe Quinn with an apparent Kickstarter scam have to do with Grummz or Ember? And obviously the answer to that question will be made much more clear later on through the course of the video, but for right now, I want people to remember 3 things. Crowdfunding a video game, irresponsible use of backer money, and subsequently, justified criticism. That's like the flowchart, if you will. Well, taking that blueprint, I want to shift gears now and talk about Ember, because the concept of accountability should be a consistent principle regardless of whether or not you agree with someone's personal politics. And from where I'm standing, there is not a consistent level of criticism between these two projects, despite multiple very striking similarities that really shouldn't be ignored. Here's the background. Ember is a spiritual successor to Firefall, which is a failed MMO-style game from Red 5 Studios that released in 2014. The story of Firefall is a pretty messy one, but one of the key aspects is disjointed development. If you scroll the employee reviews on Glassdoor, for example, you'll find things like this, which is indicative of company culture, some of which even reference Mark Kern by name. Quote, "Cons. Mark Kern is the CEO. They don't really have a good idea on what they are doing with their game. They hire people for short-term needs, promising the world, and the company lies a lot about everything and anything." End quote. There's more, much more, and to be clear, I do not believe that the entire failure of Red 5 Studios can be laid squarely at the feet of Grummz, Mark Kern. But these employee reviews do appear to be somewhat credible, especially when you read things like this, quote, "Entire departments believe in only their own visions, not what is good for the company. There is a video division that does nothing to promote the game that Red 5 is developing. Instead, they are filming frat boy humor videos that are high school quality at best most of the time," end quote. That may seem random, but it's true. Frat boy promo videos were absolutely being made, such as this one in the background right now, with an entire musical number about what it's like working at Red 5 Studios as a bunch of people just get drunk and party. To be clear, I'm not saying companies can't have a laid back, fun type atmosphere, but all of it goes hand in hand with the criticism levied by prior employees and exemplifies a lot of the possible issues regarding irresponsible decision making, which is a bit of a theme here. Now, at this point, I want to make it very clear that a lot of the information, video material, and screenshots that I'll be showcasing were investigated and gathered initially by another YouTuber named McDizzle Gaming. I'll have his YouTube channel and Twitter linked down below in the description so people can go check him out. I think he's done a lot of good work here, and I also interviewed him pretty extensively in the lead up to this video in order to get as much context as possible. So yeah, he's done some excellent work. You can find his social media profiles linked down below. Back on task. Firefall was released in 2014, but pretty rapidly fell from grace, eventually ending up on the scrap heap, which is where Ember comes into play. After parting ways with the company, some claim he was fired from the company, others claim he blew millions of dollars on a failed marketing stunt, while Mark himself has given me a statement reading, quote, "The owners wanted WoW with guns. I was offered bonuses if I agreed and vehemently disagreed, after which the owners voted to remove me as CEO," end quote. But regardless of why or how, once that removal had taken place, Mark went on to hit very, very hard times. After exiting and pretty clearly trying to make the game fail subsequently by encouraging the entire community to stop supporting it all over social media so that he might possibly buy the intellectual property dirt cheap later on after it failed, he got hit with a tax lien by the state of California for upwards of $250,000 in 2016. And then, about 7 months later, the first crowdfunding campaign for Ember shows up. This is where the snowball gets rolling, progressively picking up speed over the span of 8 years, but it started relatively slow. The first thing that happened was a simple petition with nearly 5,000 signatures, and then an Indiegogo campaign for some forums and a website. $500 goal successfully funded in the span of roughly 30 minutes, eventually raising $3,000 total. Very successful. Next came a $5,000 goal 1 month later, which once again blew past the initial target, raising $20,000 for 3D assets and making it clear that there would be a series of funding goals over time with statements like this, quote, "So here's the plan. We're breaking up the funding of the game into deliverable, playable milestones. Currently, each milestone is designed to be funded and delivered in less than 2 months," end quote. Once again, this content, as far as I can tell, was mostly delivered, but this campaign also doubled down extremely hard on the idea that Ember was the spiritual successor to Firefall, even going so far as to offer free credits to anyone who had purchased a Founders Pack in Firefall, stating, quote, "While we are not affiliated with Firefall or Red 5 Studios, our creative director and founder, Mark Kern, created Firefall and would like to extend this courtesy to all original Firefall players," end quote. Basically capitalizing heavily on nostalgia to build up a fan base for this new project. After that was over came the big one, a $20,000 goal in mid-2017, which raised in excess of $100,000 by itself, and said explicitly, for the $60,000 milestone, which remember, milestones, as stated during the prior campaign, were designed to be funded and delivered in less than 2 months, quote, "This is it. We fund fully and don't have to do any more milestones. We create the playable mock-up Thumper encounter. Call down a Thumper, mining mech, and defend it from waves of attacking Sihu shapeshifting between humanoid and beast modes. Fight a giant kaiju as it grapples with your Thumper, and defeat it as the climax of the encounter. This will be our demo for our future Fund the Full-Time Game Team fundraiser to make the final game. Reward, the goal is the reward. Play it and enjoy," end quote. Here's the thing though. While that is currently the final crowdfunding campaign that took place back in 2017, it's far from the last time that there was fundraising. It wasn't long before Ember had gone down the road of monthly subscriptions and even started selling Founders Packs for up to $1,500 each. And this is where my criticism of the project starts to get a little bit more intense. We in the gaming space are very, very often harshly critical of selling skins or microtransactions before the game itself even exists, or selling overpriced skins and microtransactions. A lot of people watching this have probably heard of Earth 2, but if you haven't, it's a metaverse project that built out aggressive monetization long before they had anything acceptable in terms of raw gameplay, and it gets relentlessly mocked by pretty much everyone with a brain. However, Ember somehow manages to rack up well over 1,000 paying subscribers during COVID, more like 1,500 actually at its peak, and by Mark's own admission during our extensive one-on-one call together, raised a total of roughly $600,000 over the span of 8 years. That's a lot of money and a lot of time, but where exactly are we with the project right now today? Well, in the background is me playing a build of Ember with Mark doing a Thumper encounter. Just the two of us. Actually, there's another guy there, but he brought me in to play a Thumper encounter and show me, right, himself. Right off the bat, there's no kaiju fighting the mech. They're not shapeshifting, it doesn't look like, which was part of the 2017 Indiegogo milestones, and still not done. Actually, there's multiple things from that 2017 crowdfund that are still listed as not done on the page itself, with the latest update to the campaign all the way back in 2021. To be clear, Grummz, aka Mark Kern, still does update his community and talk to them in Discord or through other avenues, but we're talking about a game that was supposed to have a vertical slice demo, not a game, a demo, with specific features completed in the span of a few months, supposedly, which went on to raise about $600,000 and to this very day has not delivered on all of those features. And even the ones they have delivered on, I mean, honestly, like, just look at this and judge for yourself. Yes, the recording quality of my OBS capture is kind of bad, but I'll say what I said to him directly right now publicly. I don't buy it. I don't see where the money went. I personally know indie developers who work alone and have delivered orders of magnitude more content with better design during a tiny fraction of the time, and all of that with none of the comparable financial resources. I just don't understand how this right here is an 8-year project absorbing hundreds of thousands of dollars in backer capital. I just cannot see how that is realistically possible. Now, in the interest of fairness, Mark did send me additional video material and some things from the current art revamp that's taking place, with a delivery date of supposedly first quarter 2025. I'm showing some of them on screen right now that he sent me for that purpose. And there is content here, but even with this new material, which there really isn't that much of, even seeing behind the scenes myself, walking through it all and hearing the explanations directly from him, I do not understand where the money went. And on top of that, accounting for a series of family medical issues that caused him to step away from the project fully for about 2 years total, during which time the game was still being funded, by the way, I simply cannot comprehend how this project is regarded as anything other than a comparable blunder, to put it very charitably, when held up against a Kickstarter of Zoe Quinn. However, and this may seem slightly random, but I wanted to make it a point of the video, not everything that people are criticizing this man for is fully justified. I have my own gripes with him for inaccurately presenting research my own team produced to fit his political narratives, or using a reaction to my content by Asmongold as a thumbnail when it had nothing to do with the premise of what he was trying to say. I've straight up called him a grifter before publicly for these reasons, but I am equally disenthused by the attack line that Mark Kern is a deadbeat dad, with people trying to dunk on him all over social media for that claim, as if it's anything other than a wild overreach of the facts at hand in a very disrespectful way. There's an Orange County, California legal document circulating, which I'm not going to show because it's not worthy of being a focal point, and it's from a number of years ago, that people are holding up as evidence that Mark doesn't pay his child support. However, that's not what the document shows. That case is settled, as far as I can tell, because the family unit is still intact, and I think it's genuinely despicable to fixate on something like that, dragging someone's family and children into things when the evidence of and motivation for doing so is only purely political. To be clear, there very much are things to criticize in all of this, but the child support angle, in my honest opinion, isn't one of them, and falls squarely out of bounds for the purpose of evaluating a crowdfunding campaign. I told him directly in the interview we had that I would mention this, because when someone is wrapped up in the politics of a culture war, it's becoming increasingly obvious that whatever rules of common decency should apply are getting thrown out the window, which is a very sad day for critical thinking. That being said, it's pretty much impossible to justify the current state of the project. Making a direct comparison here, despite that comparison being apples to oranges in a sense, different shape, different texture, but they are still both considered fruit. This right here is another sort of spiritual successor to Firefall type project called Nexus Drop, which seems to be one person with no funding who's been working on it since March of 2023, about a year and a half total, as confirmed by McDizzle Gaming directly with that developer. Ember, on the other hand, has what, upwards of 8 years, $600,000 with an untold number of people working on it over that span of time. And feature-wise, it is significantly behind the production curve of a single unfunded developer who started last year. That's a problem. Looking at the complete picture, I see one of two distinctly separate possibilities going forward. First option, Mark Kern continues to fund Ember through the sale of skins and subscriptions, ultimately producing nothing of value and preying on the nostalgia of a gullible fan base. So far, personally, I've seen very little evidence to suggest anything to the contrary. However, the second possibility, something that he seemed adamant to prove in our personal discussion, the second possibility is that this moment is the start, not the middle or the end, the very, very beginning start of a redemption arc, where he actually delivers not only bare minimum progress, but a fun, enjoyable, deserving product at some point in the next couple of years. I think it's a fair thing for me to say that this would make the development cycle of a vertical slice demo, not even a game, a near decade-long saga of mismanagement, but I certainly don't have the authority to say it's impossible. In fact, I'm kind of rooting for him. Mark was pretty clear to me in our call that he thinks of this game as his legacy. He has something to prove and wants to leave something, this in particular, for his children, which is a respectable goal to have, to be very clear. But for something like that to happen, dedication, work ethic, and above all transparency all need to be emphasized. I started the video by talking about Zoe Quinn because ethics and most importantly accountability are often completely disregarded when speaking about her, simply for the sake of team politics. Criticizing her failures on Kickstarter as she misused or potentially flat out stole tens of millions of dollars from her backers is quite often disregarded completely by a particular side of the political spectrum, and certainly disregarded always or outright ignored by establishment media voices, and they know who they are, and some of them watch these videos. Hi, buddy. Yeah, you. Whether conscious or subconscious, these people must be aware that their behavior is unacceptable. But they seemingly disregard that fact simply because they agree with her politics, or maybe disagree with the politics of her detractors. But the same exact thing is happening right now with Mark Kern, aka Grummz. Grummz and Zoe Quinn are about as polar opposite as it gets in terms of outward politics, but their behavior, and the behavior of their audiences in particular, is pretty much identical when you step back with objectivity. Each side will decry their opposition as ruining the world of gaming, but each side is blindly ignoring the fact that their leader has taken tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars and failed to deliver what was promised, let alone something deserving of support, while at the very same time enjoying the benefits of a deeply unproductive criticism shield, I guess I'll call it, simply because they attack their political opposition on social media. At the end of the day, Mark Kern has something to prove. Whether or not he actually proves it remains to be seen, and there's ample things to accurately criticize here. But after his very explosive growth on social media as an outspoken advocate of purging certain political activism from all of video games, I think that we, that is, the general community here, have a responsibility to be consistent. If the true and honest goal is to produce good video games, I don't think Mark Kern should be screaming about these topics on Twitter, because making a good game, political or otherwise, starts first and foremost with the $600,000 demo that he himself has been responsible for. That's it. Like I said, the video's been through a couple different iterations, but this is what I landed on. If you want to support the channel, check out the links down below. I'd like to thank McDizzle Gaming as well as Mark Kern directly and a few others for speaking candidly with me behind the scenes. Links down below to support, special VPN deals, subscriptions, etc., but I'll cut it there and stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching. Question everything, and have a nice night.